Fight or Flight is the feature premiere from director James Madigan, written by Brooks McLaurin and DJ Catrona. It stars Josh Hartnett as a disgraced Secret Service agent who's on the run for breaking protocol and doing some bad stuff to a bad guy. But the government could clear his name if he does this one mission, to capture a hacker on board a plane and bring them in alive. The only problem is the plane is full of hitmen who want to kill the hacker for the bounty, so he has to fight them all off too. I've heard people compare it to Bullet Train but on a plane, but I'm not sure how accurate that is. Yes, it has that violent but comedic tone to it, but it also has a much simpler plot than that, and it's much more interested in the fights than in the crime stories. It's basically just a goofier version of John Wick on a plane. And a good one at that. The fights are entertaining and the tone is appropriately ridiculous and darkly comical. Josh Hartnett gives an unhinged performance that adds to the chaos of it all. But it kinda throws all that away with its ending. It barely feels like an ending at all. At first I thought it had no ending beyond just a setup for a sequel. Yeah, I don't think that sequel's gonna happen. Unfortunately. But then upon thinking about it, I decided that it did have an ending, it just didn't let it breathe enough to give us closure before ending on a cliffhanger. But then, after thinking some more about it, no, it doesn't have much of an ending. For co-writer DJ Catrona, this is his first writing credit on IMDB as he's primarily an actor. But for the other writer, Brooks McLaurin, his only other credit was the Netflix movie How It Ends, which I reviewed on this channel years ago. I don't even remember much of it. But I remember the main thing people, including me, were saying about it is that it ironically doesn't feel like it has an ending. Well, he did it again. But at least this time it was a good movie before that. An unhinged Josh Hartnett killing people on a plane. I've heard critics comparing this to Trap from last year because of how he's in another over-the-top movie where he shines by leaning into it. Well, I don't think this is going to be recognized as much as that one, but I kind of prefer this. It's more over-the-top, but also more self-aware about it and humorous, which allowed for a lot of its flaws and gaps in logic to be more easily overlooked, as well as making it more entertaining for me. It ends on a less than graceful note, but one that leaves you wanting more. Like the cliffhanger season finale of a good show that Netflix canceled just before its prime. Yeah, I know that's probably the least appealing comparison imaginable. But the point is, before that, the movie is ridiculous, violent, and fun.
The president is up there with a gun to his head.
I'll do anything to save my family. Don't ask me for something I can't give. Sir, we got on your trails! You could finish this with one phone call! No. This way, Air Force One, break left!
And now, on with the show.
Final Destination Bloodlines is from directors Zach Lipovsky and Adam Stein. There aren't a whole lot of things in their filmography worth mentioning here, but one thing I found funny is that they both directed the live-action Disney Channel movie version of Kim Possible. Yeah, they're going from Kim Possible to fucking Final Destination. It was written by Guy Busick, who wrote for Ready or Not, Abigail, and the recent Scream movies, and Laurie Evans Taylor, who worked on a bunch of stuff I've never heard of, with help writing and story from John Watts, director of the MCU Spider-Man movies. Well, death is back and ready to give you some new irrational fears. When Final Destination premiered in 2000, it was a flawed yet enjoyable teen horror with a great premise about fate and the inevitability of death. However, that premise doesn't always leave much room to expand on in sequels, so they basically made the same movie 4 more times, but they amped up the gore and made the accidents more elaborate and over the top. And while that didn't make it scarier or more interesting in terms of plot or concept, they did make for even more enjoyable movies. And now, after 6 months and 25 years, they've finally done the impossible. Found a new angle to tell this story from. This one starts in the 60s with the usual setup. A girl has a vision that the high-rise building will collapse and she saves some people and now death has to kill them all. Except this time, she manages to stop the whole incident from happening. So death fucked up so badly that it spent decades trying to fix it, killing everybody including the actual building and taking so long the girl has grandchildren who shouldn't exist. Well, now it's finally her family's turn. The accidents are as good as ever. They're over the top and often funny for that reason, but they're also sure to make you squirm alongside of that. It markets itself as being shot for IMAX. I instead saw it in Dolby, but I will say the opening collapse is definitely enhanced by a premium format, and that was already one of the more intense disasters in the franchise. And the fact that it's family makes it feel more meaningful than if it was just a bunch of strangers like in a lot of these movies. And the characters here are a little more interesting than usual. Some of the standouts are the tattoo artist's cousin and, of course, the grandmother. The latter isn't in it very often, she needs to go out early for the plot to start, but her story firmly cements her as a potential fan favorite. And I don't think there was anybody that we were supposed to flat out dislike and be happy that they died, which leads to a little more suspense. Most people come for the kills, but those kills also come with the feeling of, no, not them. Just don't get attached to anyone. And it's also the last performance from the late Tony Todd, Candyman himself. He's been a part of the franchise since the beginning with his mysterious coroner role. He also apparently voices an animatronic devil in the third one, meaning the only one he wasn't in was the fourth one, and that was the worst one. It explains a little more about his character, which sounds like it could have hurt him by getting rid of the mystery, but his story actually made him a little more interesting in my eyes, although the fact that it's the end of his character probably helped with that. And that scene also serves as an emotional goodbye to him. His presence helps to reinforce the theme that death comes for us all, but it also gives him a chance to leave his fans with words of wisdom. Apparently he was told to improvise and at times feel free to talk directly to the audience, and you wouldn't expect to get emotional in the middle of laughing at fake people dying in horrific ways, but here we are. In my review of The Monkey, I said, "This isn't a perfect movie, but it's still a fun one that should definitely tie over fans of Final Destination until a new one comes out. It might even end up being the better one. It's already better than many of the Final Destination movies." When I said that, I was almost certain that The Monkey would be better. You know, it's a safe bet that the smaller Neon Project would be better than the sixth movie in the big Hollywood franchise that's mostly just seen as a guilty pleasure. But I was wrong. Final Destination is better. Better writing, better characters, better kills. Yeah, this is over the top, but not in a way that's just plain stupid like in certain parts of The Monkey. There's no cheerleaders outside a police scene, nobody explodes the second they touch electricity. It's all ridiculous, in some ways even more ridiculous than The Monkey, but at least it's somewhat grounded. It's all extremely unlikely to happen, but at least it's possible. In fact, this might actually be the best Final Destination movie yet. It takes the best parts of the sequels with less of the teen slasher corniness and an actually interesting cast of characters. The Death Star is gruesome, funny, and unpredictable as ever. And on top of that, it's the only one to feel like its own movie. A high point for the franchise and a good sign for what's to come.